Hello, Ravi, and thank you for agreeing for this interview.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
And thank you for agreeing to make this 2 hours workshop for us. So I want our participants to know you. So be so kind and tell us where are you coming from? Where have you been born? What is your background and personal and professional? What was your path like, and what you're doing now? I know it's a big question, but you can answer whatever you want.
Oh, okay, well, I was born in the U.S. in Dallas, Texas, during a 1-year trip that my parents were on there. My parents lived in India. I'm half Indian, half American, and my father and mother were missionaries in India, and they worked to set up counseling centers and training centers for counselors.
When you say missionary, what kind of missionaries?
They were from the Methodist Church. And they worked to set up counseling centers in India. And so they were working to begin with theological seminaries and then in hospitals. And they set up their own institutes to teach people how to do clinical counseling and counseling in hospitals and for people who were suffering, basically. And my father studied psychology and theology, and my mother studied social work. And so I grew up basically in India, in Indian schools. And when I was 12, every 5 years we went to the US for a year so they could get continuing education. And on one of those trips, they discovered transactional analysis. So when I was 12, they did their clinical membership in the ITAA in transactional analysis. And I got to meet a lot of the people in the TA community then. And then when I was 15, Richard Erskine, and at the time he was with Rebecca Troutman, and the two of them came to visit us in India. And I learned some more about TA through them. And when I was 16, Jackie Schiff came from the community, the Cadets community, to India. And I was on a 6-month vacation. So she invited me to come to their community in the States because she had a son who was the same age as I am. And so I went to States.
I just want to interrupt you briefly. I'm sorry. So for the people who are new to transactional analysis, so actually Richard Erskine and Jackie Schiff are the big names in transactional analysis. And Jackie Schiff was the person who was treating very severely disturbed patients and developing her own way to deal with them. So Jackie Schiff, you get to know to Jackie Schiff when you was...
I was 15 when I got to know her. And I was on a 6-month vacation from school due to the Indian school system. And she invited me just to go and to be with her in the States because her son was the same age as I am. And she knew I had a holiday. So I went to the States for 2 months just on holiday. And I lived in this, this kind of strange environment and shared a room with her son.
And when you say strange environment, what do you mean that? What you mean by that?
There was Jackie, her son, and 12 schizophrenics.
So that was actually a community for treating schizophrenics.
It was but I didn't know that.
Okay.
I was a 15-year-old. I didn't even know what schizophrenia was.
Okay, so that's why it was strange. Okay.
It was just, people who were not the same way that I was. But and I went to high school for the 2 months, and I hung out with teenagers mostly. And but I did help in the house and help with the people. And all the staff got to know me from the institute. And I went back to India to continue my schooling. And I got a formal invitation from the board about 6 months later that somebody was leaving the staff, and if I would come to the US to be in the community with her.
So the board of Cadets Institute.
Of Cadets Institute
Okay.
sent me an invitation. See, Jackie started out working in her family, but in 1972, she developed the institute, and it was formalized then.
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't just working in the family after that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a staff and a board, a
Mm-hmm.
registered organization. And so they sent me an invitation, and they said that they would provide me with any training I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
that they would pay for the training, that I would live in the community with her and lead it with her,
Mm-hmm.
and that and work in the institute also in their therapeutic program,
Mm-hmm.
and that they would pay me $5 an hour,
Mm-hmm.
which for a 16-year-old then was a lot of money.
Of course.
So I asked my parents, and my parents were, in the meantime, they were both trainers in transaction analysis. And they said, okay, so I moved with 16 and a half, I moved to this therapeutic community
Mm-hmm.
in California. And I lived there for 8 years. And during that time, I did my last year of high school, and then I did my bachelor's and my master's in psychology.
In the USA. Okay.
In the US, in Berkeley. I would go to college in the mornings and afternoon, and then go work in the institute in the afternoon, and be at home with the schizophrenics at night. And so I did parallel. I worked with her and had the community, and then she left for India to set up a new organization in India.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was that I would take it over at some point.
Mm-hmm. In India.
In India. So I went once a year to India for 6 weeks to train the staff so that they would be my staff, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so she could have a holiday while I was there, which she never took, but she could if she wanted to. And I worked, other than that, I worked in the US, and I did my master's in psychology. And one year when I was there in India, preparing to move after my master's to the community and to study medicine then, I met a German woman who had come and written her master's thesis on our program.
Mm-hmm.
And a year later, I moved to Germany and married her, and I've lived in Germany since 1985 now.
Okay, so that changed the India plans, obviously.
That changed the India plans completely. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure Jackie ever really forgave me for that, but I think we were okay at the end.
Okay, and
so I basically grew up with transaction analysis since I was 12, really.
Mm.
This was the language we spoke at home.
So you're a transgenerational transactional analyst.
Yeah. I mean, I believed that everybody talked about games and rackets and things like that this was normal conversation. Mm-hmm. Because this was at our dinner table. This is how we talked. Mm-hmm. So it's a very strange kind of situation when I discovered that the rest of the world does not speak that way.
Yes, probably nowadays scientists would call it epigenetics.
There you go, epigenetics.
Epigenetics impact on your genome.
Yeah, right. Anyway, so I lived with 12 schizophrenics in this organization. We had 20 altogether in the program. 8 were living in apartments because they were far enough along in therapy that they didn't have to live in the therapeutic community. Mm-hmm. And they would come during the afternoon and the evening to the therapeutic program. Mm-hmm. But they lived and studied and worked and did things like that. And the other 12 lived full time. Mm-hmm. in the community.
Okay, and so when you moved to Germany, what was your professional path on?
Well, when I moved to Germany, I moved because I met this German woman. So what I did professionally was the first year learned German. The second year I worked as a waiter mm-hmm. in a restaurant. And then the university, after I learned German, the university asked me to lecture. Uh-huh. So that was my invitation to get I have a special dispensation from German. I got a special dispensation to work from the German government because the university requested that I be able to lecture for them. Mm-hmm. and to set up my own institute, because the work I was doing was very useful for Germany, and there was nobody doing it in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So I started my institute with my wife together in 1987 and started lecturing
Mm-hmm.
in the university in 87.
Mm-hmm. And when we were talking, you told me that you're now integrative therapist.
Yeah.
So did you have a formal education in integrative therapy, or that just came along?
No, well, I was trained in the US. I was trained in transaction analysis through our institute, through Jackie Schiff and her son Shay Schiff. And I had training in body psychotherapy from Alexander Lowen and Matt Reddington,
Mm-hmm.
and a guy called David Fenstermaker in that time.
Mm-hmm.
I studied hypnosis with Milton Erickson.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a background of different psychotherapeutic methods anyway. And then I was at a meeting, invited by Richard Erskine, really, to a meeting of integrative psychotherapists in, it was in Vienna in 97. And they asked me to join and to be on the board.
Mm-hmm.
So I've basically been assigned and appointed to these honors. I've never really done anything to earn them, the way I look at it. But they asked me to be on the board, and so I became an integrative psychotherapist through that. Also because I had the different trainings and different methods that were all based basically on relationship psychotherapy. And so that's what happened, and so that's how I get to do it now.
Mm-hmm. So what's your current professional involvement? What you're doing now?
At the moment, I'm doing mostly training in integrated psychotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
I train people. I do work as a psychotherapist and have about 35 clients
Mm-hmm.
that I meet with, and I do a lot of seminars traveling in different places. And I'm slowly moving, though. I'm moving out of the field of psychology and psychotherapy, because I've been trained as a Zen Buddhist teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm moving more into the field of the connection between psychology and the development of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been invited to do lectures in, for instance, in a big, very big conference on consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
about what happens to the mind when we start practicing with meditative practices. And that's the field that I'm being invited to do things in more as we go along.
Well, I don't know what happens with mind, but research shows us that it slows down the brain aging for people who meditate. So that's a pretty big thing.
Yeah, there's more than that. It shows that the outer skin of the brain, I can only think of the German word for it. It's called Rind in
Mm-hmm.
German. That remains flexible. It does not become stiff. That you actually produce,
mm-hmm.
You actually produce more gray matter.
Mm-hmm.
And the gyrification of the brain increases if you meditate regularly for over 15 years.
Yes.
So there's actual physical organic differences that take place as a result of that. And so that's a field that interests me. And so that's more of what I'm being invited to do, since I'm a Zen Buddhist teacher, and that's the basic training that we have. Yeah, that's what I'm doing more now. Always more in that.
Okay, thank you for this overview of everything you've done, and you've done a lot. Yeah. And thank you again for accepting to be our lecturer for this workshop. And we hope that we can invite you also again for giving some more extensive, maybe trainings or something. And also for the people who are listening this, you are invited to our conference, National Conference of Psychotherapy also. So we are going to listen to you there also.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Ravi.